Athens is a brilliant sapphire stone on the ring called Earth. The Greek poet was not being carried away with admiration when he crafted this verse. Kostis Palamas knew very well that Athens was the cradle of Western civilization, the land of beauty, the city of light, the holy birthplace of the so many wise and great men. Greece, 3,000 years of history and civilization. It appeared on this strip of the planet quite early on, dispersing all over the Greek territory the traces of its presence as well as its creative spirit. Thus, ancient Greek civilization, from Athena to Sparta, from Corinth to Vergina, and from Delfi to Olympia, glittered and enlightened all the known world at the time. Archaeological excavations brought to light objects of the utmost beauty and architectural structures of the utmost importance. Above all, however, the civilization of that era demonstrates brilliant ideas, ideas which, despite the fact that they were formulated in the course of antiquity, they are still considered modern. In this very land, man first spoke of democracy. Democracy, a word and idea of a totally Greek origin, a word which has passed on to most languages of the world through its Greek linguistic root. Ancient Greek spirit, a spirit expressed in all sectors of human creation, in art, in politics, in poetry, in science, in sports. A spirit expressed in a period, the equivalent of which is immensely difficult to trace back through the course of global history. The Athens Acropolis, this here sacred rock, represents all the eras of this city. The marbles, the pillars, the temples, all that is to be found up here have been unbrokenly narrating all the legends and the history of the land. The marble Doric columns rising up high from the sacred Acropolis rock in a solid and imperious manner right in front of our eyes, used to support the lusciously ornamented cornice and pediment of the propylaea building. Erechtheion, situated at the foremost sacred area of the Acropolis rock, is one of the most important buildings of the Acropolis. The prostasis, bearing the renowned caryatids, stands on the southern side of the nave. They stand reposefully with a jaunty air, while their robes caress their figures as if they were alive. Parthenon is situated at the centermost area of the sacred rock and is dedicated to Virgin Athena, the goddess after whom the city was named and who has been its patron saint. It was constructed around mid-5th century BC, while its construction constituted one of the most prominent works to have been carried out in antiquity. The harmonious lines, the balance, and the elegance of the temple have all contributed in ranking it as the perfect symbol of ancient Greek civilization. The small Acropolis Museum hosts some of the sculpture which adorned the temples of the Holy Rock. However, not all of it is to be found here where it naturally belongs. Most of them are exhibited in museums abroad, and especially in London's British Museum, having previously been wrenched from the Parthenon by Lord Elgin in the course of last century. Acropolis's sculptured art, originating from the different phases the temple underwent, represents ancient Greek sculpture from the archaic to the classical period. The sculpted works of a famous sculpture laboratory in Athens, led by Phidias, became widely known for the molding and the balance the shapes they portrayed possessed. Phidias was one of the most important sculptors of antiquity, the creator of most of Parthenon's sculptured works. Cape Sounio is one of Greece's most important capes from a historical and shipping point of view. The Athenians had built a strong wall around the Saunian rock, and on its rock the Greek spirit erected the Temple of Poseidon. Only 11 of its columns survived the ages standing up. The area where ancient Ephdaurus stretched and where Aesculapius was worshipped is situated 28 kilometers away from Nafplio, nearly today's village of Ligurio, and at the foot of the Kinorkia mountain. In each and every one of the ancient Greek theatres, one may distinguish three separate areas: the orchestra, where the performance took place, the stage, wherein the actors dressed and undressed, and thirdly, the kilon, the amphitheatre, that is, the main theatre area where the spectators sat, an area named after its shape. Ancient Greek theatres hosted the staging of dramas. Drama is one of the three kinds of performance constituting the ancient Greek poetical expression. The two others are the epic and the lyric poetry. The staging and performance of a drama not only did it constitute, as far as the ancient Greeks were concerned, a recreational activity, but an educational one as well. It was through the drama and its describing life itself, expressing at the same time the high moral values of its heroes, that ancient Greeks were taught upon the magnanimous, ingenious and erudite way that they themselves should deal with their very lives. The Aesculapian theatre is the most prominent monument of Ephdaurus and one of the most famous theatres of ancient Greek civilization. It is a grand structure of wondrous architectural conception and beauty, a structure entrancing visitors. There is no other area of Greece as plentiful and copious in tradition as Arachova. This is the reason Ephdaurus called it a heavenly home for Hera, which glitters with a myriad of virtues, the result of prominent works. The ancient civilization of Mycenae is still traceable on the mountainous area surrounding the valley, a valley full of myths and tradition. The above-mentioned civilization was named after Mycenae, as its traces were first detected within the area of which Mycenae stressed. The civilization of Mycenae reached its height between 1400 and 1100 BC. The visitor advancing towards the palace complex develops a great admiration for the Lion Gate, the main entrance to the archaeological site. The gate is crowned with the renowned, monumental, relieving triangle depicting two lions carved up on amygdaloid rock, standing on both sides of a pillar. Perseus is considered to be the founder of Mycenae, where lived powerful kings like Ephdaurus, the one who presented Hercules with the 12 labors, and Atreus, first ancestor of one of the most prominent and tragic families of ancient Greek mythology. However, Agamemnon, who was son of Atreus and the one who led the Panhellenic campaign to Troy, was the most glorious of all the kings of Mycenae. On the right-hand side of the road, which crosses the Lion Gate and leads to the Acropolis, we come across a circle. a circular cemetery. The area has a diameter of 28 meters, given its outside shape by a double series of rectangular slates. The series of slates is intersected by an entrance to the site in the form of an open gate to the north, while its inner area was filled with soil and stones. An ascending level was leading to the top of the hill, whereupon the palace was situated during the era of the Mycenaean civilization. Mycenaean civilization declined in the course of antiquity and was finally brought to an end by the inhabitants of Argos between 468 and 463 BC. However, when Pausanias visited the site around 150 AD, the glorious walls along the Lion Gate still stood. Of the archaeological site of Mycenae, 9 tholoi are renowned the world over, all of which were constructed on the outer part of the Acropolis of Mycenae. The tholoi were constituted of an opening road and a burial chamber, the roof of which was vaulted. There were tombs preordained from the members of the royal family and for all those who constituted the upper class of the time. The burial procedure was to be as follows. The dead was kept lying on a bier in an all-ceremonial manner, with all the funeral gifts lying around him. Following the above ceremony, the tomb was sealed, and in the front part of its opening, its so-called road, a funeral symposium took place. Whenever the tomb was needed for another burial, it was reopened and disinfected with smoke. The remnants of the former dead person were either pushed aside, buried, or placed in an adjacent chamber, where there one. Most probably, the prevailing notion at the time was that the spirit of the dead ceased to exist after his flesh rotted to nothingness. The above procedure accounts for the fact that on many occasions the relics of numerous tombs might be found accumulated in them, while the contents of a sole tholos might represent more than one burials. The largest and most awe-inspiring vaulted tomb is the so-called Treasure of Atreus. Its road's length is 36 meters, while its breadth is 6 meters. The tholos diameter is 14.5 meters, while it is 13.2 meters high. Its opening is 5.40 meters high. It was protected by a double door, as indicated by the holes of the tholos's threshold, which most probably were there to hold a certain kind of hinge or pivot. Given the fact that it is built below the 2 colossal rocks of Palamidi and Nafplio, both of which are crowned with stupendous ramparts, castles, castle doors, and walls that slope all the way down sea level, Nafplio as a town ought to have a melancholic and grave air about it. On the contrary, however, it is one of the most jovial and genial Greek spots. Its harbour can embrace 600 vessels, while its picturesque and narrow back streets and alleyways, full of steps climbing up the rock, bring back to life memories of the past. When the 14th century was drawing to its end, the Venetians, having conquered Nafplio, refurbished the fortification of Nafplio, further fortified Palamidi, and commenced the fortification of the island of Bourgi, ensuring thus the entrance to the harbour. The Isle of Bourgi lies less than 500 meters from the pier extending along the coastline of Nafplio. Ancient Nafplia of the era of antiquity was to be found where today's Nafplio is situated, that is, occupying the northern section of a small peninsula at the cove of the Bay of Argolida. The southern section of the peninsula is but a rugged hill, 85 meters high, with its slopes facing the town being relatively gradual, whereas the ones looking out towards the sea being steeper. The Acropolis of ancient Nafplia was structured on top of this hill and was called Nafplia. Its southeastern part forms an even higher peak, Palamidi, 216 meters high, accessed by means of a winding stairway, most steps of which were carved up on stone, only a few were actually built up. The Venetian barracks, with its bow-shaped arches, still stand in an imperious way at the center of Nafplion alongside the Turkish mosque, situated near a barracks, a mosque, where the first Greek parliament assemblies were held. In between the two structures lay numerous multi-storied houses, ornamented with railed balconies and windows placed up high. The structuring of these houses commenced 150 years ago, when Nafplio was pronounced the first capital of Greece. In January 1828, Ioannis Kapodistrias disembarked at Nafplio, having previously been elected governor of Greece by the National Assembly, who had met at Trizina the previous year. Nafplio was then pronounced capital of the newly founded Greek state, instead of Aegina, which was to be pronounced capital in 1829. It was in this very city, and in 1831, that Kapodistrias was murdered by his political opponents right outside the city's church, while in January 1833, King Otto disembarked at the harbor of Nafplio, escorted by 36 foreign ships and a staff of numerous people in his train. It was in July of that very same year that decision was taken for Athens to become the capital of the Greek state, a transfer which took place in 1834. At a small distance from today's large village of Olympia, we come across the celebrated archaeological site of ancient Olympia, an area full of legends and tradition, an area fully entitled to boast about its eminent history. The Sacred Valley, despite the absence of the Pan-Hellenic celebrations and the fact that its sacred temples have been worn down by time, keeps on living quietly and peacefully. Its inherent beauty, alongside the radiance of its monuments, go on enrapturing today's visitors, reminding them of the paramount spirit of ancient Greeks. Below the fresh and swishing foliage of the trees, within an area rich in vegetation and mutual transference of shapes and colors, and between two streams, the gurgle of which sounded like music to the visitors' ears, the sacred area of Olympia channeled its spirit to the souls of the faithful, at the same time chiseling in them the most profound desire of all Greeks, the development of a good-intentioned and virtuous character. Such was the vocation of this here sacred area, an area which deeply influenced the souls of ancient Greeks and empowered their spiritual contact by being a sanctuary open to all. Citizens from all the cities participated in the games that took place here. The sanctuary of Olympia, through the might of armistice and mutual worship, proved to be one of the most eminent areas of antiquity. The Olympic Games became an institution in 776 BC. This fact, however, does not imply that throughout the ancient Greek world and before that date there existed no games. The Temple of Hera rises at the foot of Chronio. The temple is of Doric order. Heraion, an oblong, heavily structured temple supported by 6 pillars on its facade and 16 along its long sides, constitutes one of the most ancient examples of ancient Greek monumental temple structuring. The innermost area of the nave still hosts the pedestal whereupon the stone statues of Hera and Zeus stood. Today, all that remains of them is but the head of Hera. Inside this temple, the renowned statue of Hermes of Praxiteles was preserved in good condition. Its preservation is due to the clay which covered it following the dereliction of the structure and the consequent weathering of the plinths by the floods. The archaic stadium, simply structured at the time and possessing no normal slopes, stretched alongside the roofed balcony of the Thesauruses, while its western narrow side, where the finish line was drawn, looked out towards the great altar of Zeus. And it was then that the game started their gradual transformation into a worldly and social event and spectacle. The length of the track of this new stadium is 212.54 meters, its width 28.50 in average. The slopes surrounded and encircled the track from all its 4 sides, possessing but a few stone benches reserved for the guests of honor. The stadium's seating capacity was roughly for 45,000 spectators, who sat directly on the ground. The stand of the umpires, situated at the southern slope of the stadium opposite the altar of Dimitra Hamini, was also made of stone, rather than clay. In the course of the 5th century, the sanctuary was at the peak of its glory. It was then that the immensely important structure of Altis was reared right at the center of it, the gigantic temple of Zeus, which started being structured in 470 BC, that is, directly after the reorganization of the state, and was completed between 460 and 456 BC. It is one of the most important temple structures of antiquity. Despite the fact that the exalted chryselephantine statue of Zeus does not more exist, there exists one of the most imposing sets of antiquity's sculpted artworks, which combined all of the achievements of both the austere classical order and the early classical period into a top-ranking and unparalleled creation, the pediments and the metopes of the Temple of Zeus. The scene of the Temple of Zeus's eastern pediment was inspired by the legend of the chariot race between Pelops and Inomaus, both heroes considered to be the founders of the games at Olympia. Inomaus, son of Mars and king of Elis and Pisa, had an only daughter named Hippodamia, whose beauty stood so much out that even her own father fell for it and in love with her. She, however, did not succumb to his sacrilegious passion. The western pediment displays a centaur fight. Centaurs were monstrous creatures, humans the waist up and horses the waist down. The scene on the above-mentioned pediment is totally different to the scene on the eastern one. The only feature that retains the utmost grandeur of the divine tranquility is the unparalleled, imposing central figure of Apollo. To his left and right there stand Theseus and Perseus, followed by classes of centaurs and women, all in an incessantly billowing motion from the center to the side and vice versa. Olympia's copper exhibits possessed not only a quantitative superiority as far as ancient Greek weapons are concerned, but a qualitative one as well. One is to come across real masterpieces of copper weaponry, leaving today's practically minded persons startled with their incredibly wise and inspired adornment. The Museum of Olympia is full of archaic sculpture that imposes itself upon the visitors with a might which makes it difficult for the latter to focus, both visually and mentally, on anything else. On the other hand, one comes across some of the most wondrous creations depicting the history of Greek pottery through the most crucial phases it underwent. Probably the most renowned piece of all Greek sculpture, Hermes of Praxiteles, its fame stands so great that our presenting it seems rather futile. The sculptor depicts Hermes holding young Dionysus in his hands. It looks as if Hermes was holding something else, with the other hand probably a bunch of grapes, showing it to Dionysus as he, in his turn, as if he were reaching out for it. A small rocky island reputed not only around the whole of Greece, but the world itself. The picture of Hydra emerging from the horizon is a picture which may only be properly depicted either by the words of a poet or through the motion of an artist. Arrival at the port of Hydra is but a pleasant surprise and a warm welcome into a new, nonchalant, languid atmosphere, an atmosphere in which life leads its own unhurried rhythms. As soon as the ship anchors in the port, the first pleasant surprise comes from realizing the fact that there are no automobiles circulating in Hydra. Traditionally, transport of goods and people has been carried out with mules, thus turning one's arrival to the island into one's best introduction to stress-free holidays. Hydra of the past and of Miaoulis and of Canaris, captains of fire ships, has evolved into Hydra of the personalities and celebrities of the world. Apart from the liners and the flying dolphins, private yachts have increasingly over the last years become the means to get to the island. Yachts, cruisers and speedboats, sailing boats and light, fast fishing boats all compose a medley of a happy-go-lucky attitude, at the same time adding very distinctive, variegated touches to the island's port. Traditional wooden houses, a windmill, the island's castle are the elements which set Hydra's distinctive character. Visitors outfind no difficulty at all in incorporating themselves in such an atmosphere. They are bound to be allured and fascinated by the island. There are also amusing parts to it, a fact that the islands worldwide known for their beauty cats seem to agree with. On the other hand, there are aspects of it fully of elegance and finesse, as are the island's ascending cobblestone alleyways and their imposing arcades. The green and silver-grey colors of the olive tree, the white and the ochre are the colors of the fine Hydran aesthetics. All of them colors were used and still are by local workmen and artisans as well as by nature. A panoramic view of the port leaves one with the same harmonious and tasteful impressions, even when one is looking at it from up high. The reality of everyday life tied up with the traditional forms of life. Wooden carts, cobblestone back alleys ascending all the way to azure front doors and beautiful small yards. Whitewashed walls, steeples of the past, all provide the onlooker with the quality he is so extensively deprived of by living in today's large cities. The narrow street of the sky constitutes the frontier line, dividing the old rooftops from one another. The houses, despite the fact that they were and still are constructed in a rather tight architectural manner, having their facades looking rather inwards, they might under no circumstances be considered uninviting. Most of them are mansions of the past, with ivied walls, strangled by bougainvillea, affectionately and laboriously kept up. This is the reason they still possess the beauty of detailed attention, of elaborate ironwork, of the old knocker. The sea's deep blue and lilac are points of reference in the locals' lives, a welcoming message on their homes' front doors and windows. The same welcoming message is the incessant ticking of the clock up on the Venetian-style church tower. Prior to the 1821 rebellion against the Turks, the Temple of the Assumption of the Virgin was a monastery hosting monks. The devout atmosphere of the era is still maintained by the aesthetics of the temple. The tall bell towers have been perpetually bespeaking of such grace and grandeur. As one soon find out, it is right here that the harmony between animate and inanimate living beings and things, the undisturbed continuance of a proud past, are being preserved. Mid-noon, the sun collaborates with the sea. Both swimming and sunbathing are but a luxury and a delight, as well as any sea sports. Looking from up high, it is obvious that Greek summer mid-noon lays down a more indolent and listless pace. The imposing rocks are succeeded by creeks full of fishing boats. Summer days are long and heat-stricken. They are reflected in the sea. They openly test the strength and durability of rocks and of the scant vegetation. Sunset in Hydra is not simply another moment in the course of the day. It is a different, totally new and glorious way for one to perceive nature. One gets inspired by the sunset in Hydra, an inspiration which takes place effortlessly, voluntarily, an inspiration experienced in a different way for each and everyone visiting Hydra. At a certain moment, the island's products capture its enchantment. Studded with small galleries, as it is, Hydra has been established as a meeting place for all forms of artistic expression. Hydra's kayaks keep on providing the island with the necessities, as they have been doing for hundreds of years now. Daytime is gradually giving in into nighttime. The colors, the fragrances, the thoughts and the feelings all have ample time for thousands of transformations, and they also have time to unfold and develop. Nighttime in the island is as romantic as the moon itself and as intense as the passions it arouses. Night outs in Hydra are as high societal and glittering as they are in but a few other places in Greece. The island of Spetses, located on the right-hand entrance to the Bay of Argolida, seemed to have emerged out of the sea. The sole remaining old cannon effectively concentrates all that the revolted air of the island symbolizes and stands for. To the background of these old cannons stands the old hotel, which in the course of its long history has hosted important individuals and celebrities and is being preserved as a monument of the island. The preservation of the statue of Bubulina, female captain of a fire ship in the times of the revolt against the Turks, constitutes a further proof of the respect for the ideas of a bygone but all-important era. Bubulina courageously confronted the destiny of her people and contributed in allowing Greeks of today to scan and survey the very same waters of the past, freed from any occupation. The convenient wharf of the island constitutes a pleasant surprise to the eyes of the oncoming visitor. These horse-driven, well-looked-after dog carts and buggies are not simply the remnants of a peaceful and beautiful bygone era, but also the synonyms of an era of probably more intrinsic values, more humane contact with the environment. The ride, a long-gone specific stroll, follows a route passing inside and around Spetses, the capital. In Spetses, the sea is synonymous to life in all its aspects. The possibilities to delight in it are numerous and well organized. Choreography in water skiing is usually impromptu extempore, while skill assures satisfaction even to those who are enjoying just looking at the skiers. Tropical tints, canoes, windsurfing, water bicycles and humor are all either for rent or at anyone's disposal. This merry-go-lucky mood is what fuels the tenths of sports and games, and also what has the power to animate the child we all hide deep inside ourselves. The either sandy or pebbly waterfronts, all clean and well looked after, are properly equipped to fully satisfy the tourists enjoying their swim. The afternoon fades, colors turning all scheduling simpler. Modern, impressive yachts and old traditional shipyards put in a harmonious appearance thanks to the alleviating and relieving light and the mutual destiny predestined for both by water. Life in Spetses for some is easier and indeed more qualitative. Religiosity is abandoned, never blatant or howling, however. It is imposed by the whitewashed churches, the last among rocks and trees monasteries, and even by the lonely lighthouses with the ambient aura around them. The afternoon salty taste of the Aegean Sea is, as sailors say, different to anything else in the whole wide world. The island of Poros is situated almost next to Argolida of Peloponnese. It is a volcanic island which was formed by the coupling of the islands of Calabria and Spheria. The austere, almost severe beauty of Poros's coastline has been trademarked as part of the enchantment and the glamour of most Greek islands. The shading off tints of the crystal clear sea cover the whole range of the spectral colors from the deepest of blues to the topmost transparent green. The very small town of Poros itself, amphitheatrically built in shades of blue and white, tags along after the coastline's meandering. Its port hosts all sorts of moored vessels and crafts. Due to its nearness to Piraeus on one hand and to the coast of the Peloponnese on the other, Poros is an excellent resort for short holidays on privately owned yachts and cruisers. By being friendly, rich in colors, and with a strong character of its own, Poros is adroit in fulfilling every wish and in hosting all sorts of activities. The island's modern hotels have exploited and thrown into relief some of the most difficult to access parts of it. These hotels offer a multitude of ingenious opportunities for relaxation, sports, or both. The abundance of greenery in certain areas of this dry land cools down the onlooker's eyes. As far as luxurious yachts are concerned, Poros seems like a paradise full of little quiet creeks for them to run aground. On the other hand, as far as the devoted photographer is concerned, it is an endless pool of themes and an incessant source of inspiration. The eyes embrace Aegina from the hill of Colonna, whereupon stands the distinctive pillar originating from the temple of Apollo. The temple has been a sanctuary since ancient times, and in particular since the 6th century BC. Myth has it that Aegina was named after the daughter of river Asopos, whom Zeus brought over to the automotive island, and later on Zeus and the daughter of Asopos had Aeacos, who was crowned king of the island. The picturesque fish taverns, the churches, the jetty, and the colorful fishing boats are all there to brand the island by monopolizing the visitor's attention and by relaxing his senses. Appetizing seafood snacks, generous flavors, and a variety of smells are some of the advantages enjoyed by one who is visitor to it. On a daily basis, tens of fishing boats set off to collect the sea gifts. Embarking on such a voyage is bound to lead to an unforgettable experience. The classy environment of the island might very well function as a historical map. Neoclassical mansions, small churches built in accordance with the typical architecture of the Aegean Sea, and castles, the medieval influence of which is traceable. Aegina, with its ancient spirit and sacred monuments, coexists with the well-organized spa, the impressive modern hotels, and the jovial, cheerful, high-spirited tourist places. Aphea, an ancient goddess and patron saint of the island, Supposedly, she was ascending Elanio Mount to meet with her father Zeus over the Argosaroniko Sea. Daughter of Zeus and Carmi, haunted by the unquenchable love for her by King Minos, she threw herself to the sea, swam all the way to Aegina, and hid inside the island's forest to keep safe from the king's desperate whims. And on the inside of this forest, she disappeared. It was there that the ancient inhabitants of Aegina built a sacred temple in 570 BC, which was destroyed in 510 BC. Because of its importance, in older times, the temple was considered to be the temple of Zeus or Athena. However, in 901, the German archaeologist Furtwängler identified this temple as the Temple of Aphea, an identification which was in accordance with Pausanias's historical documents. The name derives its origin from the ancient word apha, meaning disappear, as was the case with the daughter of Zeus. The temple with peristyle constructed of bulks of locally excavated parolithos is ornamented with elaborate embossed pediments depicting the fearsome fights of Aeacides. Since 1812, these pediments, along with other architectural findings, have been displayed in Munich's Sculpted Works exhibition. Worshipping the goddess of Aphea, an activity deeply rooted in the post-Mycenaean period, sunk into oblivion after the wearing away of the civilization of Mycenae, the latter being the ones who established Aphea's worshipping. Numerous clay idols depicting animals of breastfeeding women were found in the place of worship. The above idols are considered to be donations to a certain goddess of fertility. In our days, the colonnades stand forlorn and the pediments all wrenched and desolated, while the panoplied Athena, instead of scanning the land of Aegina, as she is meant to be by virtue of being a goddess, remains confined in museums. The atmosphere in the archaic walls is mystic, with echoing oracles. Aegina, and righteously so, was considered to be God's favorite area and an enchantress of the commoners. The gate of the famous Palace of Barbaiani opens up all the way to their end. The home refuge of Ioannis Kapodistrias, the first governor of freed from Turkish occupation Greece, is an edifice of unique finesse and everlasting repose and composure. Kapodistrias lived in it from January 1828 until October of that same year and honored Aegina by pronouncing it capital of the newly established Greek state of the time. This palace served as the government house of freed Greece, while the first ever national mint operated inside this very mansion. Many prominent Greek writers, painters and literary people visited Aegina and fell for it. Inside this very temperate house, Nikos Kazantzakis wrote the life and adventures of Alexis Zorbas. The road passing by the house, inside which such a piece of writing was put down in paper, clearly defines the different eras. Aegina's monuments are inexhaustible. The beautiful, austere, traditional houses speak of fine, inherent aesthetics. The wooden house of the painter has a predilection for the nuances of ochre, while the minutiae at the yard of the windows reveal the work concealed on its inside. Aegina treasures up in an awe-inspiring way the names of the great sculptors of antiquity, such as Anaxagoras, Glaukias, Smilis, Mychonas and others. And indeed, it does so by treasuring them up in the forms developed by these sculptors' contemporary descendants. Wandering about Aegina constitutes an intense and incessant succession of impressions, a kaleidoscope of shapes and colors, and matchmaking of tastes and experience. Constructed on the vestiges of the ancient Phocian city of Anemoria, Arachova abuts on the famous Korikio Nandron, the Korikio worship cave, situated westwards of Livadi. In historical times, due to its geographical position, the small city played an important role in rekindling the flame of revolt against the Turkish occupation of central Greece. The victories of General Karaiskakis against the Turks became legendary. Popular tradition has it that the victorious army commander named the city after the Arachova walnut trees which bloomed in the area. Arachova is the name of the walnut trees in the local dialect. Today's inhabitants of Arachova make an effort to preserve some traits of this dialect along with those manners and customs which still determine their cultural identity. This effort, however, is becoming all the more difficult due to the swarming tourists from Athens and elsewhere who find appropriate lodgings before making outings to the Parnassos mountains. Local folk architectural tradition is constituted of a mingling of housing elements from the 18th, the 19th, and even from the 20th century. Stone-made houses with wooden ornamental facades, picturesque narrow alleyways and structures of a neoclassical order all compose the small city's character. Arachova or Arachova, an Meteora to ancient Greeks, is undoubtedly one of the integral and most enchanting spots in our wandering about the Parnassos area. Parnassos Ski Center. Man's dynamism is in a constant effort of trying to tame the landscape, as the multicolored figures animating the ski slopes confirm. The needs of the crowds of fanatic skiers pouring in Parnassos and easily reaching the ski center by means of the carefully designed roads are well served by ultra-modern facilities comparable to the ones of other ski resorts in Europe. Parnassos constitutes an irresistible pole of attraction for groups of young people and families who are either already introduced to the delights of winter sports or eager to acquaint with them. The equipment of the ski center covers all needs and turns every exertion of personal effort easier. The numerous ski tracks, each with a different grade of difficulty, were developed to serve the same purpose: to encourage repetition, which is known to be the mother of learning, and to pleasantly startle the grown-ups without scaring off the young ones. The properly organized premises of the ski refuge are there to welcome you and to relieve you of the day's fatigue. The warmth, the proper service, and the delightful food are sure to pleasantly invigorate you either at the end or in the course of the day. Even sunbathing up here? Why not? The multicolored deck chairs, the intense sunlight, and the sea of snow right opposite you all call for it. The colors of war, the spot, and the group of friends to keep you company are for you to choose. Sand and rock, two inseparable acquaintances sharing for centuries now the historicity of Delfi. For years now, every morning, the same old sun gleams and shafts of sunlight have been opening a grievous ball on top of the familiar relics, which they first perceived as glittering temples burdened with glory. In ancient years, Delphi were considered to be the omphalos of the earth, the center of the universe, as you would speak of them today. Delphi, though, had been intensely culturally activated. The ancient temple of Delphi, with a seating capacity of 5,000 people, staged performances of all the major artists of its era. It was constructed in the course of the 4th century, having been preserved until today in very good condition, while the excellent acoustics of it impressed the visitors. The first signs of reconciliation of peoples emerged right here in Delphi. Hope for a better world was given birth right where today's winged heralds of peace stand to rest. Relics from the temple of Apollo still stand today, dating back from the 4th century BC. Previous to that temple, there had been built another 5 ones. Of these, the first 3 fall within the sphere of mythology, while of the fourth one, which was of Doric order, some structural relics exist. People from all over the then-known world arrived here to consult Pythia and to listen to her deliver her oracles. She sat in the Holy of the Holies of the temple, amid smoke coming out of the ground, and, having previously chewed on bay leaves, she would fall into a kind of trance, delivering the priests with ambiguous divination for the latter to convey them to the ones seeking her oracles. Time has respected nature, but not man-made structures. This is the reason that the most important findings of the numerous excavations are kept in the museum, whereat we are heading straight off. The statue of Aeneas, which stands proud for having beaten time, constitutes an all-time wonder of ancient copper sculpture. The marble reproduction of the archaic omphalos, which was then considered to be the center of the earth, lends to the museum its very own imposing presence in the trumpet call of ancient Greek spirit. The two large statues of the Cleovis and Vitonas Kouri stand like guards ready to take action were one to question the sacredness and sanctity of this site. The stern, elephantine face of Artemis, crowned with a golden diadem. Golden engravings, seeming to have just been engraved by experienced artists of today, are a stirring witness to the artful way in which ancient Greeks passed their works on to eternity. Meteora, the state of angels, constitute the second largest and most important, second to Mount Athos, monastic complex on Greek soil. On the northwestern tip of Thessaly, on a scenery of unique beauty formed by the mountainous volumes of Pindus and Antichasia, and accompanied by the nymphs of the Greek rivers and woodland, the two rocky, steel giants of Meteora rise up high over beautiful Kalambaka and the picturesque castle, imposing themselves upon the awed and ecstatic visitors. More than 20 monasteries, swarmed up on top of the heavenly carved rocks, constitute the monastic rock city of Meteora. Many of these monasteries were built in the course of the 14th century and later on in the course of the 16th century, a period of intense prosperity and thriving for both Meteora and Greece as a whole. They were either refurbished or supplemented. The sun rays are transformed into stars and the sea into dark sky. Galaxidi reached its highest peak between the 16th and the 19th century. The reason for such a peak was its commercial fleet consisting of 475 vessels. Later on, and as steam-powered railroad agents took over cargo transport and the Corinth Canal was opened up, ship owners from Galaxidi were totally ruined. Still today, however, the city of Galaxidi retains reminiscences and recollections of that era. Galaxidi, by being a nautical city par excellence, would in no way leave yachtsmen unappeased. There exists a properly organized marina where yachtsmen, sheltered by the might of the winds, may moor their yachts and be supplied with water. There are also locals who can deal with whichever engine problems were to come up. Visitors can go for a swim in the organized beach of the yachting club, as well as in the sandy beaches located in the area. There are hotels, rooms to let, inns, as well as the Galaxidi camping area to accommodate tourists during the whole of the summer season. And thus ends our tour of beautiful Greece. We hope you had a good time in this trip and that you will come to visit the land of Socrates and Plato, the land of the immortal Greek spirit.